Hello everybody and welcome back to another C++ programming exercise video. And in today's video we're going to be doing C++ programming exercise number 4. Now C++ programming exercise number 4 says, define a class counter type to implement a counter. Your class must have a private data member counter of type int and function to set and retrieve the value of counter and increment and decrement counter by 1. The value of counter must be non-negative. Okay, so now what you first want to do is you want to include your 3 different files here and be using your main.cpp file, your implementation file, and your header file. So this is going to be the program that this is going to be our testing program that we're going to use to make sure that this entire thing works. We can actually write this without even knowing, a user can write this without even knowing these file implementations. All they need is this file and the main.cpp file in order to create a program, working program using the functions. They don't need to know the ifs and hows of these functions. And now actually, if you are going to make a program much like that, you're going to want to explain to the user how your functions work. You're not going to give them the actual, you're just going to explain to them, give a short brief explanation of how each of these functions work, but you're not going to give them the exact code because you don't really want to do that. I've already gone over that in previous example videos. So it shows that this is a function to initialize the counter to 0. This is the function to set the counter to the value specified by x. And if x is less than 0, then counter will be equal to 0. And this is a function to increment the counter by 1, and so on. And this is probably one of the best ways to make actual notes, by telling you what one piece of code does, because these will be especially useful for the user, because sometimes they'll try and set the counter to, let's say, -6, but that won't work and we'll set it to 0. But if they don't know that, then they're just gonna think, oh wow, there's a problem with your code. But you're just gonna have to, but it'd be a lot less problematic if you just said, oh yeah, if you set it to a number less than 0, then it will just set the counter to 0. Okay, so let's now get on to clearing our implementation folder. So we'll just tab all of this, or let's just do it one by one. So initialize counter. Now all of this is going to do is it's going to initialize the counter to 0. So let's do that, of course. All we need to do is write in counter is equal to 0. Okay, let's see what the next function wants us to do. Function to set counter to the value specified by x. If x is less than 0, then counter is equal to 0. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to write in if x is greater than or equal to 0, then then counter is equal to x, else counter is equal to 0. There we go. And now we have this next one, increment counter. Now this is going to be very simple. All we need to do is counter plus plus. We don't have to do anything because there's absolutely no way that counter, by adding 1, can become negative. So right here, we are actually going to have to write in if counter is less than or equal to 0, counter cannot be negative, else counter minus minus. And now here we have get counter, which is going to be very simple. All we need to do is return counter. And here, all we need to do is cout counter is equal to counter and now here it's just going to be set counter. We can actually use functions inside of constructors. If you did not know that, set counter x.